Ireland, Crimes and Mysteries with Newells.
Hey guys, welcome to Ireland, Crimes and Mysteries, the podcast channel that takes you on a journey through the dark and mysterious side of Ireland's history. From infamous crimes to unsolved mysteries, we explore the stories that have captivated and intrigued people to this very day. Join us as we uncover the stories behind these cases. Whether you're a true crime enthusiast or a lover of all things mysterious, this is the podcast for you. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and let's explore the dark side of Ireland together. This podcast has been compiled from information gathered in the public sphere, like news articles and documentaries. Everything in this podcast is alleged unless a conviction has taken place. Today's case brings us to the medieval city of Kilkenny, which is located in the southeast region of Ireland in the province of Leinster. Kilkenny is a major tourist attraction. It has the imposing Kilkenny Castle, which comes into view as you drive through the city streets. It is an impressive structure and it looks over the city. It was the seat of the Butler family, who have links to British royalty. Other attractions in Kilkenny include St Canice's Cathedral and Round Tower, which date back to the 13th century. Kilkenny is also a vibrant arts and culture destination, with many festivals taking place there, including the Kilkenny Tradfest, the Kilkenny Roots Festival, and the Kilkenny Arts Festival. It's also a foodie destination, and if you're a foodie, the Savour Kilkenny Festival is a must. Kilkenny also has a great night scene, so all in all, there is something for everyone in the city. Dean Roche, who I will be focusing this story on, was a proud Kilkenny man. He was 31 years old at the time of his disappearance in Ballyfoyle, County Kilkenny, on the 22nd of March 2015. Ballyfoyle is approximately 11 kilometres from Kilkenny city. Dean lived in Hebron Park in Kilkenny with his mother Geraldine. He was the middle child, having one older brother and one younger brother. He was born in Cork, where he lived until he was approximately 7 years old, when his parents separated. His mother then moved with her children back to Kilkenny, as this is where she was from. They originally lived in New Park before moving to Hebron Park. Despite being described by family and friends as a guy with a great sense of humour and a loving son, father, uncle and friend, Dean was not without his troubles. Dean became an addict when he was around 17 years of age, and this addiction would follow him for the rest of his life. His disappearance on the 22nd of March 2015 and the alleged circumstances leading up to his disappearance have left his family with more questions than answers, and are as follows. On the evening of the 22nd of March 2015, Dean left his house in Hebron Park by taxi, having told his mother he would be back later. It was a dark March evening and he was heading out to Ballyfoyle to buy a car for €200. He had on his person a total of €900 cash, which his mother had given him. At approximately 5:05 p.m, he left home and was dropped off by a taxi driver, who Dean's mother knew at the house he was buying the car at approximately 7:45 p.m. Dean and the taxi man had actually ended up getting lost on the way out to Ballyfoyle and could not find the house, so they headed back into Kilkenny. But as they were arriving back into the city, the man who Dean had been buying the car from rang and redirected him to the house, so Dean and the taxi man headed back out to Ballyfoyle. This was the reason there was nearly a 2.5-hour delay from when Dean left his own home in Hebron Park at 5:05 p.m. to when he actually arrived at the car seller's home at 7:45 p.m. The person Dean was buying the car from we will be referring to from here on in as Witness 1, and I will be assigning numbers to any of the other witnesses to the events that transpired that night, as they are just witnesses and their identity must be protected. This is the story given to both the Gardaí and Dean's family, but over time some of the stories do change slightly. Witness 1 had to pay some of Dean's taxi fare because Dean stated he hadn't enough change when he arrived at the house. He then spent some time chatting with Witness 1 before the sale of the car, a Mitsubishi Lancer, went through. He then signed the logbook. This logged the transfer of ownership from Witness 1 to Dean. This logbook or vehicle registration book would later actually be found in Dean's car, which was unusual, as it should have been the seller who sent the logbook to the Department of Transportation when there was a change of ownership. Dean then handed over the €200 and the sale was complete. It was now approximately 7:10 p.m. He left witness one's house driving the car heading in the direction of Castlecomer towards Dublin, and somewhere down the road Dean crashed the car. At approximately 7:20 p.m, a young female, who we will call witness 2, said she saw a young man looking in one of the windows of her house. She stated the person looking in the window was wearing a red cap. She ran and told her father, who we will refer to as witness 3. Witness 2 would later change her story, stating that she was looking out her window and saw someone in the yard with a red cap on. At approximately 7:30, witness 3 went out and spoke to whom we assumed to be Dean, who stated that he had just bought a car from witness 1 and had crashed it down the road as the steering had went. Dean also stated that he had hurt his mouth in the crash. Witness 3 asked Dean how he was getting back to Kilkenny, and Dean said to him that he had organised a lift from his brother. In reality, Dean had not rang his brother, so why he said this is a mystery. Dean then left witness 3's yard. Witness 3 was unable to recount in what direction he had gone when he left. About a half an hour later, at 8 p.m, another neighbour, who we will refer to as witness 4, went outside of his house and noticed his car was missing. He went back in the house and got the keys to his wife's car and went searching for his own car. He drove in the direction of Murky, which is in the direction of Castlecomer. This is where he found his car parked in a gateway not far from his own house. He stated he didn't see who took his car. Was it Dean? He drove his car back to the house, where he would later notice that his wife's handbag was taken from their kitchen, which means someone was allegedly in their house at some stage that evening. Later that evening, Gardaí had several reports of break-ins in the Ballyfoyle area, and also a report of a crashed car with the occupant being suspected of the break-ins. 4 patrol cars were dispatched to the area and they found Dean's car with the airbags deployed, but there was no visible signs of injury to any person that had been in the car. They searched the car where they located the logbook that Dean had taken with him from witness 1 when he bought the car, and they noticed that it had been signed by Dean. Dean would have been known to the Gardaí, so they were under the assumption that he may be responsible for the other reported break-ins in the area. At around 9 p.m, a search began for Dean. As the Gardaí began to search at 9 p.m, another woman, who we will call witness 5, stated that she saw a man with a red cap crawling in her kitchen, but by the time she entered the room, the man was gone. She then noticed her handbag was missing and went and told her husband, witness 6, she had seen a man in the kitchen and that her bag was now gone. Witness 6 noticed that the back door was opened, but when he went outside there was no sign of the man with the red cap. Then at around 9:30 p.m, another neighbour, witness 7, saw a man exiting through her front door. She went out and spoke to this man, who told her his name was Stephen and said he was in the wrong house. He walked away from her and exited through a gate in her back garden, telling her he would be back in a minute. Witness 7 described the man as being around 5'10", and that he was wearing a red cap and looked like he was on drugs, stating his speech was slurred. This was later disputed by witness 1 and the taxi driver, who said that when they were with Dean, they hadn't seen any signs of him being impaired by drugs. He seemed perfectly compos mentis. Witness 7 said he sounded local, like he was from the country. She stated that when she looked around after Dean had left, she noticed that her car, which was parked in the back of the house, had the back door opened and the glove box was open. She did not state if anything had been taken from the car. Approximately 15 minutes later, witness 7 said she told Gardaí that she saw a light-coloured car pass her house at speed and screech to a halt at a gate of a field next to her house. She then heard a male voice shouting in an aggressive manner to someone to get in. Get the F in. Get the F into the car. And the car pulled off at speed in the direction of Castlecomer. This is what she told the Gardaí. She would later change her story when she spoke to Dean's mother Geraldine and his best friend Damien. She told them that when she was speaking with the man, he appeared in a distressed state in her yard. She asked him was he all right, and he stated he wasn't and needed help. She then went into her house and got her phone to call for help. But when she came back out, he was gone, and this is when she heard the car screeching to a halt and the shouting for someone to get into the car. And the car, which she then said was a silver car, took off at speed in the direction of Castlecomer. She states that she then told witness 8, whom I'm assuming is her husband, and he went and looked for the man. Witness 8 then met 2 other men on the road while he was looking for the man in the red hat. We will refer to these men as Witness 9 and Witness 10. They were neighbours and said they were out looking for Dean and Witness 5's handbag. This handbag would later be found beside a tree outside Witness 7 and 8's front wall the morning after. It is unknown if anything was missing from the bag. Was it tossed from the speeding car? Later, Witness 7 and 8 would say that the dog fence at the side of their house beside their garage was damaged that night, and Witness 7 stated that the dog alarms had gone off around 9:45. This is around the general area that this alleged car pulled up. This is the account of the last known movements from the witnesses in the Ballyfoyle area. The day Dean went missing, he was wearing a black tracksuit bottoms, a black zip-up jacket with white runners. He is described as being 5'8" in height, with blue-green eyes and short brown hair, and he is of slim build. So what did happen to Dean on that fateful night? This is what the family have been trying to find out for the last 8 years with no success. So many questions. What happened that the car crashed on Dean? Was that Dean that all the various witnesses in the area saw? Was it Dean who took the car on Witness 4? Who did the light-coloured silver car that Witness 7 stated she saw pull up above her house belong to? Who was driving this car? Who was the man shouting at from the car to get in? Did they take Dean? Or has Dean ever even left Ballyfoyle? Initially, when the Gardaí found the crash car Dean was allegedly driving, they never even contacted any of Dean's family to alert him that he was possibly in a car accident and was now missing, according to the family. On the morning of Tuesday, the 24th of March, Dean's mother went to the Garda station to report her son missing, as he hadn't returned home. The Garda at the reception desk told her that he was not missing, and had been seen in New Park later on the Sunday he had actually gone missing. This has never been verified. Geraldine had waited until the Tuesday to report him missing, as she had assumed he had gone to Dublin after buying the car. Geraldine had not wanted Dean to buy the car in the first place, as she was worried that he would get in trouble with Gardaí for not having the car taxed or insured. She assumed he'd been caught driving the uninsured car and said she would leave him to stew and face the consequences and think about what he had done for a while. But when she was not hearing anything from him by the Tuesday, she began to worry. She tried again to report him missing that Tuesday evening. This Garda was more willing to help Geraldine, and a full-scale search for Dean began out in Ballyfoyle, with the Civil Defence, the Army, Gardaí and members of the public, including Dean's family and friends, all joining in the search. Local farms, including outbuildings, fields and slurry pits, were all searched, and the search would go on for weeks, but not a trace of Dean was to be found. A local area known as the Glen was also extensively searched after a neighbour had said he had witnessed 3 silhouettes running through his field, which was beside Witness 7's house, after he noticed his horses had been spooked by something. Who were these people running through the field at this hour of a dark March evening? Runners were later found in this area, but no DNA belonging to Dean was allegedly found on them, and his family never saw the runners, so are unable to say if they belonged to him. Witness 7 also stated that Dean must have had to run through the field and into the glen. She said Dean would have had no knowledge of the area, so would have been unaware of the sheer drop at the end of the glen. The family also never got to see the crash car that Dean allegedly had the accident in that evening. It was during the initial investigation that the 10 witnesses came forward with their various accounts of their dealings with the male individual we are under the assumption is Dean came about, as well as the account from the taxi driver that originally dropped Dean to Witness 1's house that night. It had been stated that Dean had ran through this field by Witness 7's house and into the glen, which ended in a sheer 20-foot drop. This has not been proven. Logic would say that if Dean had fallen 20 feet, he would have been severely injured or worse, and no evidence of Dean being at the bottom of this drop have ever been found. Dean's phone did continue to ping in the area for a few days after he went missing, but the family are under the understanding that it has never been recovered. Where was the phone and why has it never been found? After Dean went missing, it was extensively covered by the national media, and RTE's Crime Call did a feature on it. But they made no reference to the sightings of the silver car, which the Gardaí had already told the family was not a significant lead. If this car was there that night, one would assume it was a very important part of the puzzle. Nothing came of the Crime Call feature, as some of the information also relayed to the public on it was actually incorrect information, according to the family. Days, weeks, months and now years have passed for Dean's family and friends, and they are no closer to finding out what really happened to him. They feel let down by the Gardaí, who for whatever reasons have not prioritised Dean's disappearance in recent years. Dean's mother felt that over the years the Gardaí never kept her properly informed of any updates on the case, or let her know if there was any new searches being carried out. This caused immense stress to Geraldine, who after Dean went missing became terminally ill. All she wanted was to find him, or at least know what happened to her son. And if the worst had happened, she just wanted to lay him to rest like any other mother out there would want. She said before she died that all she ever wanted was to bring Dean home. She never hid the fact that Dean had his own demons and was no saint, but she loved her son and just wanted answers. Dean's mother Geraldine died in 2018 without ever knowing what happened to her beloved son. Stress of the years after his disappearance no doubt a contributing factor to her death. On her deathbed, Geraldine asked his best friend Damien not to give up on finding Dean, and in the years following her death, he has gone above and beyond to keep Dean's name out there and carry out Geraldine's wish to bring Dean home and lay him to rest beside his mother. Geraldine also expressed the wish not to be buried until Dean and her could be laid to rest together. So Geraldine's ashes remain with the family, who have vowed to keep her wish. The whole family long for the day they can honour it. In a 2017 article in The Herald, Damien stated that they were fearful that the investigation would not continue. He said he would not give up on Dean and alluded to the fact that the stress was, quote, wearing down Dean's mother, and that the pressure she was under was immense. All we want at this stage is to give Dean a decent burial, he said. By 2017, Dean's mother was so convinced Dean was dead, she had given most of his clothes to charity. A Garda spokesperson at the time stated that Dean was still listed as a missing person, but there was no updates on the case at that time. In desperation, about 10 weeks after Dean had gone missing, his mother turned to a medium for help locating him. At the time, they felt she had connected with Dean and shared a location with them, but again nothing came of it. Various theories have been looked into as to what may have happened that night, but they are only theories, and there is no concrete evidence that any of them actually happened. These theories include the first theory being that Dean left the house where he had bought the car, and a little down the road he crashed it. Dean then went back up to witness one's house to confront him about something dodgy being wrong with the car, and things escalated from there. The second theory is that Dean went on the hunt for another car after he had crashed his own car, as he wanted to get to Dublin. Had Dean taken witness 4's car that was found parked in a gateway a short distance from his house? If this is the case, why did Dean go to the trouble of stealing the car, only to abandon it a short distance down the road? Why did he not drive it the whole way to Dublin? Did something happen to Dean to make him stop the car after such a short distance? The third theory being that some people speculate that the silver car was allegedly, in fact, an unmarked Garda car, and it was them who picked Dean up in the silver car. Another theory is that Dean sustained a head injury after the crash and was disorientated and out of sorts. He was in an area he didn't know well, and maybe he got lost or into some sort of trouble, either falling or succumbing to his injuries. But if this was the case, why has he not been found? After all the searches in the area, no sign of him. Seemingly any potential places Dean could have fell into, like a slurry pit or the glen, have been extensively searched. As stated, these are all only theories and none of them known to be fact. This is the puzzle of the story. Nobody seems to know what exactly happened to Dean despite all the sightings and interactions with him that evening. It is like he literally vanished from existence. So who was actually involved in Dean's disappearance? We cannot say for sure. Was it a local farmer who caught Dean trespassing? Was it the Gardaí? Was it a passer-by? Was it the occupants of the light-coloured car? Was it somebody who knew Dean had cash on him? Was it an accident? Was Dean injured after the crash? Or did Dean disappear of his own accord? Dean's family do not believe the latter to be the case. These are the questions that have been torturing the family and friends of Dean Roche for the last 8 years. On the 8th anniversary of Dean's disappearance, Gardaí put out a new appeal for information on KCLR radio. Dean's brother spoke, saying Dean came from a loving family and whatever happened to Dean, he did not deserve it, and that the family don't deserve it either, not knowing what happened to him. He said that Dean's son doesn't deserve it. He said he's a young man now, that he was only a boy when his dad went missing. He went on to say that the family will never give up looking for Dean. He expressed his hope that at some stage somebody would come forward, as someone out there has to know what happened. He said all they want is answers, they don't hold any animosity. They just need him home. Even his own children are always asking about their Uncle Dean and where he is. He said his brother Keith is absolutely heartbroken, as is Dean's grandmother, who is still alive. Dean's niece Sophie has also given a heartfelt plea for information about her uncle. She said it's tearing her family apart not knowing what happened that night. All they want is an answer. They won't hold any grudges. They don't even want to know who the person is that is involved in Dean's disappearance. They just want him home. She said the house isn't the same without her uncle and asks the question, how can somebody just disappear into thin air? She said she finds it hard even going to visit the house herself, knowing it was the last place Dean was before he disappeared. She said no one knows what it's like waking up every day thinking all the things that might have happened to him, wondering where he is, who did something to him, why was something done to him. She said she knows Dean went down the wrong road in life, but people do make mistakes. She said he was the nicest person you could meet and he just went down the wrong road. She went on to say that anyone that knows Dean knows he was a nice person and had a heart of gold. And for someone to put them all through this pain and torture, imagining all the awful scenarios such as why did this happen to him? Or where is he? Or why he didn't call for help. She said it's unlike Dean to be gone for this long, as he was a home bird and that they were very close family. Dean would never go far without saying he'd be back. He would always ring his mother to tell her if he was going to be longer than he said he would be. She asked if anybody knew anything to contact the family, even if it was anonymously. They would be so grateful. Dean's best friend Damien, as I stated earlier, has been actively keeping his name out there in the hope someone will come forward with information at some point. He runs a Facebook page dedicated to Dean called Dean Roche Missing Person Kilkenny, which I know he'd appreciate if you'd give a follow to. He's been out to the Ballyfoyle area on several occasions doing his own searches for Dean. He has done numerous interviews and he is the reason I'm doing this podcast today. Damien contacted me to know if I would help by doing a podcast on Dean, and of course I said I would help publicise the case. I hope in a future podcast to have Damien on where we will discuss Dean's disappearance and subsequent investigation and get Damien's thoughts on everything and bring us up to speed as to where the investigation is now and how the family are coping. Damien spoke openly to me about Dean when we met, and his passion to find answers to what happened to his best friend were palpable. He said their only intention from the very beginning was to find Dean and bring him home to rest with his mam, who he states died a broken-hearted woman. He said her last words to him were, "Don't forget about him." Damien told me that until he takes his last breath, for better or worse, he would never forget about Dean or the promise he made to Dean's dying mother. He said, quote, "It's not about who did what, it's about what's right and what's wrong." The right thing to do for anybody who knows anything is to in some way direct us to where the road ends. The wrong thing to do is to continue to inflict all this pain and suffering onto Dean's family, who go through every day wondering and not knowing what happened. He made an impassioned plea to whoever may be involved to please understand that by not setting yourself free of responsibility of the truth, you are creating a legacy for Dean's family that will stretch and continue to cause unnecessary pain for all those who love and miss him. Find it deep in your heart to help us unlock the truth. It is very obvious from my research and talking to Dean's best friend Damien that he was a much-loved member of the Roche family and a much-missed friend. His disappearance has left a wide gaping crevice in the life of everybody that knew and loved him. They cannot get on with their lives until they have answers. So if anybody out there has any information, no matter how small or insignificant you think it may be, please contact Kilkenny Garda Station on 056 777 5000 or the National Missing Persons Helpline on 1800 442 552 or email them at office@nymph.ie. You can also contact the Help Bring Them Home confidential line on 1800 911 999. You can also ring the Garda Confidential Helpline on 1800 666 111. Or you can contact Damien directly on his email, which is on the Dean Roche Missing Person Kilkenny Facebook page, and it is as follows: damohip@yahoo.com.
You've been listening to Island Crimes and Mysteries with Newells. Join us for another episode coming real soon.